Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Good in the Head podcast. My name is Pete Jones, and I am good in the head. Today, we have with us a good friend of mine, Eric Schmidt. He is somebody that I met at work. We both work at Boeing. He works on the DCMA side with the Army, doing inspections of all the helicopters that we're building and selling. Eric, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. This is my very first podcast, so you're
Fun.
you're popping my podcast cherry today.
Right on. Hey, just real quick for the guests, explain the Butiti poster and shirt.
So Butiti is in Tagalog, the Filipino language Tagalog. Uh, it literally means like pufferfish or tadpole, um, but it's also slang for big belly. You see someone who has just a big beer belly or something like that. And when whenever you lift heavy weight, you you got to kind of like breathe and brace, and stick your stomach out to brace the heavy weight, and you look butiti. And my wife told me that. She's like, "Oh, you look butiti." So it just kind of stuck. It's a funny word, and I just thought, oh, you know what? I could come up with a little logo with a puffer fish picking up a weight. So yeah, that's where it's all started from.
I love it. And that's a poster that you have in your home gym right there on the wall, huh?
Yes, this is a big banner I have behind my power rack,
Awesome.
and I got the
So
shirt too.
Eric is somebody that I saw around work and didn't really know him. And one day we started talking about weight training and strongman. And then once I got to know him, I was like, holy mackerel, this guy has done so much in his life. Super interesting, phenomenal at everything that he's dipped into and experimented with. He's done numerous different things in his life, and I wanted to have him on the show today, sort of extract some of his skill acquisition stories, life stories, and things that may inspire or empower other people to try new things. And I know for me, he's been inspirational. He's inspired me to start lifting heavy again, has instructed me and pointed me in the right directions of how to do so. He's currently a strongman competitor worldwide, and in a few weeks is actually going to Japan with some of his workout partners and friends to compete there. So exciting stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I'd like to start with your childhood, if we could, and sort of work our way through your life experience until present time. What was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? How were you raised?
Well, I grew up in a small town, rural Missouri, um, close to the Missouri River. The River Flats we called it. Um, I'm a product of the 70s and 80s, which I am extremely thankful for because I think, the 80s were just the best. You know,
I
we,
agree. Yeah.
you look back at just the pivotal things that happened, the culture. I mean, yeah, growing up in it, maybe you don't realize how good you had it until you're in this present time and you look back and just the generation now is just like I kind of feel sorry for them that they missed out on such the good things that we had.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, small town Missouri, um, just typical little boy stuff, climbing trees and riding bikes and just stuff like that. Just um,
What was your family life like? Were you raised in a religious upbringing? What are some things you remember growing up that stick out in your mind?
um, I mean, we weren't like overly religious. I mean, we go to uh, Baptist church. Um, my mother and father separated when I was in the third third grade. however old that is, 8, I guess. Um, and then my father remarried, and all within that same area, like just the next town over. We moved to the next town over, which is like 10 miles away. Um, but it yeah, not overly religious, but I mean we did go to church, Baptist church.
What were some of the teachings that you were brought up with that created core beliefs within you that you think helped you in your life?
Hmm. Um, I guess I'm not really sure. I mean, I was mostly a pretty good kid. I think I had a healthy respect and fear of my father, that I didn't, want to, I didn't want to get in trouble. I never did anything like overly bad, or I was mostly um, you know, pretty good, I guess. Like I'm just trying to think of like, what did I learn in my early years? It's like, I'm not sure, I was just a normal kid, nothing that really stands out other than, yeah, I don't know. That's a tough question. Like I can't really recall that far back any pivotal core values. I'm just, you're just a young boy, or a teenager. Um, I mean, I never was a violent person, I never got in fights. I was just treated people mostly good. I try not to be a bully. I wasn't a bully. If anything, I was the one that got bullied. But I don't know, just live life, in small town Missouri. I guess there's not much you can get in trouble with there.
Yeah. Yeah, back in the 70s and 80s, it was like act right or get your ass beat, that's
Oh yeah, sure. And that's yeah. I like I say, I had a respect for my father. I didn't want to get on the receiving end of him, spanking me or anything.
that's most of us back then for sure.
Mhm.
So, you talk about bullying and not being a bully, and maybe you were the one that did get bullied. I've got a similar experience within like grade school, junior high, and high school was a little different because I started lifting weights, and people were less likely to bully people that had a little muscle on them back then and stuff. But um, when did you start getting into physical fitness? Was that later in life, or did you do that in high school? Sports at
Um,
all?
Definitely later in life. I mean, I wasn't really an athlete in school. I did run track one year. Um, I was mostly into the arts, because I was a really good my father was an artist. He actually was an art teacher in school. Um, and funny story, I was actually one of his students. And it's weird when your dad is the teacher, so it's like when you have to address him, do you call him Mr. Schmidt or do you call him Dad? It's kind of weird, like in front of all the other kids, you call him Dad. It's just kind of weird. But when and this is like when first, second, and third grade age, so young kids, and whenever the class would get rowdy, and he would make us all do exercises. Like he'd have us do calisthenics, like jumping jacks and circles with our arms, just to wear us out. That's I remember that was some of his punishment. If the class got too rowdy, he would make us do that. Um, but yeah, in high school, I was mostly, I was in band, mostly into art. Uh, I did, like I said, I did run track one year, and the coach made me run 2 miles, which I appreciate because when I went into the military, you're doing nothing but running.
Mm.
So I guess, and leading into the military, um, you do a lot of the the PT, the physical training for the Army and the military. So, but I didn't lift weights. I wasn't like trying to get big or strong. It was just kind of survive enough to do the PT, and that was it.
Nice. So, did you go into the army right out of high school, or
Yes. Yep.
okay? Were you like, is that something you knew you were doing while you were still in school, or did you graduate and then decide?
Yes. In high school, I I can't recall the moment, but I just really got into helicopters. And like, the I think one pivotal moment I can recall was my stepfather was in the Missouri National Guard, and we had gone to this it was kind of an exhibition. They had the National Guard there doing their thing, and at this city park, and an AH-1 Cobra flew in and landed, and it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And I got to sit in the pilot seat, and I'm probably like 12 or 13 at this time, and that just cemented the deal. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a helicopter pilot. My whole goal was to be a helicopter pilot. So when I joined the Army, I had I went into aviation um, as a Huey helicopter mechanic. I figured, I'll get in the door, get in aviation. I can submit my flight packet and try and be a pilot. So yeah, my whole goal was to be a helicopter pilot when I was looking to join the Army.
That's wild. It's interesting what sort of changes our minds and alters our trajectory and our viewpoints when we're young. I was the same age when the Boy Scout troop I was in went to Boeing, and we got a tour of the place. It was a little different than now, of course, because we were actually able to climb all over the chopper and sit in the cockpit and look around and think it was really cool. And I thought to myself way back then, I was like, "Hey, someday I would really love to work with this company building these things. This is so
Yeah.
cool." And
Well,
here we are.
it is ironic because um I had this computer game that was like an Apache simulator. It was on I had a Commodore like 128 computer, and it was like a little very basic flight simulator for an Apache helicopter, and I would play that all the time. And I even had a model, a large model of an Apache that I had built, one of those plastic models. And this is all back in like 88, 87, 89, you know, and here we are, how many decades later, and it's like I'm building the real thing. It's like never would have thought, just it's crazy how life just happens, and here we are.
That's pretty crazy.
I
It's
never
almost
not to interrupt, but yeah, I never so when I was in the Army, my first enlistment on the Hueys, as a mechanic, I became a crew chief. And a crew chief is like a mechanic that gets to fly with the helicopter. You ride in the back, so you're kind of you're um, one of your duties as a crew chief is also door gunner. If you're if you have guns, or if you're in a combat situation, you would man one of the door guns, like just like Vietnam, the old Vietnam helicopters. Um, so I got 3.5 years of flight, uh, on flight status, about 300 hours, flight hours, non-rated. Um, and I think that kind of scratched the itch for getting to fly. Like when I became a crew chief, my desire, and there was other things happening in life at that time too, but my desire to be a pilot kind of faded. And I kind of found my niche in maintenance. Um, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being a mechanic. Being a crew chief was it's a prestigious position to have, as an enlisted guy, because you get to wear a flight suit. You're flying with the helicopter. So um, yeah, I never pursued to be a pilot after that point. I just stuck with being a mechanic.
Now, I've seen some pictures on your Instagram feed and things you've shared over the years, with pictures of you with choppers on the chopper,
Yeah.
all camoed out, flight suit, machine guns,
Yeah.
and you weighed maybe what, 140, 145, soaking wet back then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was very skinny. I think the most I ever weighed was probably like 160. And
Really
I weighed,
fit.
yeah, I carried that weight like all the way into my 40s. I was just, I had that kind of metabolism, I guess. I could eat whatever I wanted. I never gained weight. I never lost weight. I just, you know, some people would think that's fortunate. I guess it kind of is, but, and I'm sure when we get into talking about strongman, you'll find out how frustrating that is.
For sure. It reminded me of some of the podcast recordings I heard with Stan Efferding about when he was younger and was trying to gain weight and just weighed like nothing and was
Yeah.
eating everything, just trying to pack it on and what he had to learn and accomplish to become where he's at. I mean,
Yeah.
your stories are similar in that they align in that way. What were some of your favorite experiences and places you visited and lived when you were in the Army?
Oh man. Well, I guess so. My Army career was not all consecutive. So my first enlistment was 5 years. That was working and flying on the Hueys. Um, After my first enlistment, this is when I lived in Hawaii. Uh, I decided I was going to get out and just stay in Hawaii and work there. But I also realized like I need to get a job and I need to have a skill. So before I got out of the Army, I went to the FAA and got my airframe and power plant license so I could be a civilian mechanic because you need that A&P to work on the civilian side. So I did that and started working at Honolulu Airport as a airplane mechanic. Um, a couple of years later, some of the guys I worked with at Honolulu were in the Hawaii Air National Guard, Air Force National Guard, and they worked on the tankers. They have a KC-135 squadron out there at Hickam Air Force Base. So I decided I'm gonna do I'm gonna go join that for a little. I really wanted what I wanted to do was kind of pad my resume with more experience. Um, so I became a jet engine mechanic on the KC-135s. Um, they had the big turbofan engines, so I wanted to get more experience. So I joined the Hawaii Air National Guard and did that, just the weekend warrior kind of stuff for several years. Went to school for the engine to be an engine mechanic. Um, and then I think that I did that for about close to 5 years. And around 2000, I got out of that. And then 9/11 happened, and I was working at Raytheon at the time as a contractor, building torpedoes out of Pearl Harbor. And yeah, when 9/11 happened, um, it wasn't for a couple years later. I think it was 2000, well, it was 2005. So close to 3 to 4 years after the attack, there was a reserve unit in Hawaii, infantry unit, that was deploying to Iraq. And I felt um, I felt like I needed to do something. I wanted some adventure. Uh, the relationship I was in was at the time was not very good, and I kind of wanted to get away from that. And I just needed kind of just I just needed a drastic change. So I reenlisted back into the Army Reserve as an infantry guy.
Wow.
A complete departure from what anything I've done before. Um, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. It's gonna be a challenge. Um, but I just felt I wanted to do something. I want to go over there and help out, go over there and yeah, just and see what happens, just for the adventure. And so I did what I needed to do to catch up to the reserve unit because they had already mobilized. And so I was kind of like trying to play catch up. I went through infantry school, um, went through the mobilization process that the reserves go through, and eventually caught up to them in Iraq. And yeah, I did 6 months over there. Um, because they were like already halfway through their deployment. They were there for like over a year. Um, so in that respect, I had it kind of easy because I only did like half a deployment. But yeah, so and you know what? I really enjoyed it. Man, the infantry was so much. I mean, it sucked. It was hard. There was times it was hard. There was times it sucked so bad. But man, it was just like uh, I enjoyed it though. It was like that suck that you can look back and like, yeah, I did that. That was pretty awesome what we did. And 2 years later, in 2007, I deployed to the southern Philippines with the same unit. Um, we were going down there to augment uh, some special operations teams that were operating down in the southern Philippines. Uh, and that was just an amazing deployment. Just, it was me. I was a staff sergeant at the time, E6. I had two soldiers of my own. We were embedded, we were augmenting a special forces Green Beret team. Uh, and there was 9 of us, 9 Americans, and we were augmenting a Philippine Army battalion that was out in the jungle and on a small little Philippine island. And that was a lot of fun, a good experience. The team guys took really good care of us. They treated us, even though we were infantry, they're Green Berets. They treated us just like one of their own, which I respect so much. Um, yeah, that was a really good time. Uh, and yeah, when I came back from the Philippines, uh, my civilian job had gone away, so I came back to Hawaii unemployed. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to go back to active duty, Army. I'm already a staff sergeant. I'll have a pretty good paycheck. Uh, and I ended up going to Korea as an intel analyst,
Hmm.
which was for me not a good fit because I literally came from the jungles of the Philippines, running around the jungles with a rifle in my hand, you know, doing Green Beret stuff to an intel analyst where you're just sitting behind a computer doing PowerPoint all day in a windowless room. Yeah, it was that was yeah, this just wasn't a good fit for what I did not enjoy that at all.
How long
Um,
did you do that?
3 years. I spent 3 years in Korea, which which was good. I mean, it was good and bad, I guess. Korea was a good experience. And being an intel analyst, it was kind of cool just kind of being in that process and being privy to like just, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you don't hear about in the news. I can't talk about it, but um that was interesting in that respect. Um, and I did have it really good in Korea. I cannot complain one bit because uh I was part of the J2 staff, and it was I didn't have to do shift work. I didn't have to go to the field. I mean, we had military exercises, but um, my officer in charge, my OIC, was an Air Force lieutenant colonel. Um, I had an Air Force enlisted senior airmen that worked for me. Um, I didn't have to babysit soldiers. I didn't have to pull staff duty. It was just come to work, go home. I had a 3-bedroom apartment right outside the gate in Itaewon. Um, and I was stationed in Yongsan, which is right in the middle of Seoul. So you're in the middle of this thriving city with anything you want to do. So yeah, I had it really good in Korea. I shouldn't complain.
That sounds amazing. What an adventure, man.
And then, but yeah, I did not like being an Intel analyst, and I really wanted to get out of that. But unfortunately, in the Army, when you make rank, you are kind of pigeonholed in what you're doing. So I couldn't get out of Intel. Like I wanted to get back into aviation when it was time for me to reenlist. I tried everything I could to like, whatever avenue I could to try and get back in aviation because, that's my first love. That's what I do, for a living on the civilian side. But I just couldn't do it, not as an E6 staff sergeant. So I decided, well, you know what? I'm just going to get out of the Army. And I started firing off resumes. Just, I probably submitted hundreds of resumes, like literally 100 resumes to all these different companies, just trying to look for a job. And had a few interviews over the phone. And Boeing um, hired me. Now, I was a field service rep on the A160, which is like a drone helicopter, a large drone helicopter at the time, out of Southern California.
What year was this?
This was 2011 to 2012. I was there for about a year. Um, it was, awesome job. I really loved it. But when you work on experimental aircraft, you know, the job is not that secure. It's a little because you don't know if the program's going to stick around, or it's because we were in a constant state of just, are we going to, because we were meant to deploy to Afghanistan with this aircraft, but it just kept getting pushed back and pushed back. And because when I hired on, they said, okay, you're going to be in Victorville for 3 months. You're going to train up. You're going to deploy to Afghanistan, and support this aircraft. And that was like, heck yeah, I'm gonna make some money as a contractor, on that Afghanistan gravy train. But 3 months turned into 6 months, turned into a year. Living out of a hotel room and out of a suitcase, and then finally, that program just failed, and the military didn't want it anymore. And yeah, then it was just like, all right, let's just look for another job. And that's when I came to DCMA and Boeing Mesa.
Nice. Wow, that's quite the history. Now, as part of getting to know you, I found out that you did release a CD of some badass music. And uh, can you describe to the audience your musical career, when you got interested, how far it went, everything about that?
Yeah, so I think I've mentioned to you, at our age, it feels like we've lived, 3 different lives.
Yeah.
And being a musician was one of those lives. So back, um, I'd always been into music, like I mentioned earlier in high school, I played in band. So I had that kind of musical ability. Started playing guitar, learning it, at a young age. And I was part of a church um, when I lived in Hawaii. I actually started in Texas when I was stationed in Texas at Fort Hood. But then when I got stationed in Hawaii, um, we had joined up with a church there. And it was one of those types of churches where they have a very upbeat music service, and I eventually joined the music group, playing my guitar, and I was a musician for that church for, wow, it was probably 13 years. Um, and in that time, you just get better and better. I would practice like at minimum every day, at least an hour or two, just at home. Um, and yeah, and my influences, I call it they're my guitar holy trinity. Was like Kirk Hammett from Metallica, Joe Satriani, and George Lynch from Dokken. Um, that's my big three inspirations right there. And if you listen to my music, you might pick out, some stuff that may be similar to their styles. I don't know, but those three, their music inspired me because I really got into just like the instrumental rock guitar. Um, Actually, George Lynch, so with Dokken, his song "Mr. Scary" was the first instrumental I'd ever heard. Because I hadn't discovered Joe Satriani yet, but that Dokken song "Mr. Scary," when I heard that, it was just like an epiphany. Like the clouds opened up and the ray of sun shined on my face. It was like, oh, like it was the most amazing thing I'd ever heard because it was just an instrumental rock and it just had like this, and it just builds up like the tension in that song. You can just feel it. It just builds and builds and builds. And I was just amazed by it. And that's really inspired me to um, start recording my own music. And so so while I was playing for this church ministry, I was recording my own stuff. And the internet was still kind of new then, and there was a website called mp3.com, and you could upload your own music on that website, and people could listen to it or you could buy a CD if they wanted, that kind of thing. So I'd put some music because it was my creative outlet. I needed something more than just what I was doing with the church group. Because for the church group, just to uh, give details. So they have a song service at the beginning of the service. We'd play our songs, and man, some of the most talented people I've probably ever performed with, just in that church group at the time. It was just like the timing of, you had the singers and a friend of mine was a good musician and a good singer, and the keyboard player, just everyone was so good, and it just made me better. And we played all kinds of different genres of music too, which I really appreciate. It wasn't just hymnal music. It was very upbeat, clap your hands, gospel, little jazzy stuff, bluesy stuff. I had a special music group where we played um, mostly rock and roll, Christian music, but it was rock, a little bit of heavy metal. We'd even play some island music because we were in Hawaii, so you had just a broad spectrum of genres that, as a musician, just makes you so much better, to learn your skill, to learn that craft. But I started recording, this instrumental stuff on my own because I couldn't really perform that in the church. It didn't really fit, the it was just instrumental stuff. But
Yeah, what's the name of your album?
the name of the album is Devil Boy.
Okay, and that's my favorite song, I think, on the whole out the
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, dang, that's sick.
But
Can't do that at church, huh?
well, that song came later after I left, and the reason I left is there was there was people that were people close to me that started, they didn't like that I was doing my own thing
Hmm.
outside of the church. And here's, you never give Eric an ultimatum. I'll tell you, it's not going to go well because I will watch the world burn before I do what you want me to do. And
I like that. I respect that.
and yeah, the pastor of the church had pulled me and the other members aside one evening, and he, had me on the carpet and told me like, look, you can play for God, or you can play for yourself, but you can't do both. And I was just like, I I packed up my guitar and I walked out and I never came back. I was like, this is just, yeah. It had been building up. It wasn't just like that one moment, but it was kind of a build up. But that's the straw that broke the camel's back. And it was rough. You kind of feel betrayed, and just, man, it was, and just the people that were close, to me, just coming against me. And yeah, it was a dark time. But
Isn't that interesting in life how you're a part of a group and then you do something that isn't in alignment with what everybody thinks they want, and then they try to correct you instead of just letting you expand into,
yeah, and
I don't
it's
know.
it's
I've experienced the same.
and it's like, the instrumental music, it's not, there's nothing evil about that. It's just music. You can still glorify God with through my talents, but anyway, it's
Well, the
that
names
was a
of
turning point. That was a huge turning point in my life, though, that this my whole trajectory changed because, I loved being a musician. I could have done that forever. And but it was that it built up to that moment, and I did a complete 180. And I recorded that album. There's like 9 or 10 songs. I recorded all that, just on my own. I perform all the instruments. The drums are all programmed except for one song. I did have a drummer play with me. But all the music that you hear is me, either a guitar on a keyboard, a bass guitar, or of some effect. Um, like I say, that the drums are programmed through a machine. Um, but yeah, I did it all.
it's sick. I really like the album, and for anybody who's interested in hearing it, you just like go to any platform really now. And I found it on YouTube Music, but it's if you put in Devil Boy Eric Schmidt, it comes right up.
Yeah.
Um, another chapter in your life or skill you've acquired that I really found fun and cool as hell was driving, racing your Porsche.
Yep.
Um, I had the opportunity last year to be in the car wearing a helmet and being violently thrown about for a matter of minutes. And my life flashed before my eyes. The adrenaline pump was so incredible. I mean, it was one of the opportunities of a lifetime, just riding along with you while you're racing the car against time. And it was sick. And
Yeah.
I'll have the recording link to that, your album, your Instagram and Facebook, everything, all the links for people to enjoy. But you want to describe to the audience like when and how you started getting interested in that and how you got so good at it.
Yeah. Well, to what you said, yeah, it's difficult being a passenger, especially in my car because the seats are not bolstered. So yeah, you really got to use your glutes, and you're trying to squeeze your butt cheek, trying to hold on to that
Oh
seat.
yeah, I was
Uh,
sore the next day.
yeah, but I've had most of my passengers all tell me like, it's like a booty blaster workout. But yeah, so back in early, let's see, well, 2004, I believe, is when I started racing. This is when I was in Hawaii. Um, I had at the time I had a little Chevy S10 pickup, and I didn't buy that truck with the intent of racing it. I just bought an S10 because I liked S10s, little mini trucks. But I don't know how I found out about autocross. I think a coworker had mentioned it, and I started looking into it, and it looked like a lot of fun. And I thought, oh, because my truck is fixed up a little bit. It was lowered and it could scoot around pretty good. So I thought, well, heck, I'm gonna try and enter my truck in one of these. And at first I'd gone and watched one just to kind of, see what was going on and met some of the people there and everyone was, friendly and I was interested in racing my truck and they're like, yeah, there's someone else also sometimes it comes out and races his truck. So I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And yeah, that was back in 2004 or maybe 2003, I forget. Um, and yeah, I just kept doing it. Um, just trying to get better at it because your first time out, you suck. I mean, it's like if you're the first time you go to an autocross, man, leave your ego at home because you're gonna get beat bad.
Well, that's
Um,
true with everything, really, but
yeah,
autocross is something else.
yeah, because it's a skill that you develop just with a lot of seat time. Um, but yeah, I kept doing it. We'd race once a month, and I uh, I actually trophied. I think the 2004, 2005 season, I took um, for the Hawaii region, I took points champion, which meant I was consistently good throughout the year, and I took points champion for the year, and then we had a championship runoff, and I took third place for the in the runoffs. And in the class that I raced in with my truck, I was racing against a buddy of mine had a Mini Cooper. Another guy had like a Honda Prelude, I think he had, a couple other cars, and the time spread between first and second, or first to third place, first and third place was less than half a second. It was all that close. So it was
Wow.
very good competition, um, which makes it fun because sometimes you get a person they are so good that they dominate a particular class and there's just no competing with them. And but in our class, we were all so close it could go either way. If you blinked a certain way, it comes down to like less than half a second was the spread between first and third place. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, and I kept doing that. There in Hawaii, I would autocross my little truck. Then, I deployed, like I mentioned earlier, to Iraq and the Philippines, and I ended up moving to Korea and then coming to Arizona. So I had kind of a break from racing for a while. Um, when I worked for Boeing in California, I was able to save up a lot of money, and that's when I bought that Porsche 911 because I thought I want to get a nice car. I got all this money in the bank. I want to splurge on something nice. So yeah, I bought that Porsche, and when I eventually moved to Arizona, I had I thought, well, you know what, I want to get into racing, the track days and the autocross with the Porsche Club, and this is in 2012. So yeah, and I just been consistently racing every month with the Porsche Club since then. So yeah, I've been literally racing for what past 20 plus years. Um, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a skill that I want to keep on doing. I mean, strongman is my number one passion, but I will always do autocross because I want to keep that skill sharp. Um, and I've been, been getting better at it. I'm starting to place pretty high in the on the podiums. I'm actually I signed up for SCCA Nationals Tour next month, so I'm excited to kind of gauge myself against you know in a car class with those drivers, just kind of see how I stack up because um, I'm consistently at the top of the sheets. I take second uh, fastest Porsche or sometimes first. I'm always, in the top five, top three mostly with the Porsche club. But I'm consistently racing against those guys, and I just want to gauge myself and see how I race, how I stack up against you know other people at a national tour level. So to see how truly good I am.
Yeah, that's a hell of a community. Your buddies, were all talking when I came to sit as a passenger during your race that day, and they were all just down to earth, really cool guys,
Oh
real
yeah, yeah,
smart.
yep.
And it made me realize, like with all these different things that you've done throughout your life, and Strongman's next, we're going to discuss everything about Strongman. That's incredible. But it seems like consistency has led to excellence in every one of those areas. And that sort of a superpower that we each as individuals can cultivate, just keep showing up, keep showing up.
Yeah,
And you're
definitely.
bound to get better, man. Results don't lie.
Yeah, I mean, like with the music, I had mentioned like every night I had the guitar sitting by the bed, and I there was never a time where I didn't have that thing in my hands. Like hours, like an hour or two every night, I'd be playing it, diddling around, trying new tunes, coming up with new songs, new riffs, new licks, just um or at the church, I'd before the song service, I'd always be up there playing, you know, and yeah, just a consistency through that. And then yeah, with the driving, it definitely takes consistent seat time to get good at it. Um, because in the racing, and my friends we all thought the same thing. It's like when we first started, we're kind of like mid pack drivers, and you're looking at someone that's maybe further up on the list, the results list. You're like, man, if we were just as good as if we can start catching up with this guy, we'll be good. And then a year or two passes, and it's like, you know what, we're consistently beating that guy now. It's like, well, if this guy, man, he's first. If we can just beat the number one guy, we're going to be really good. And years pass, and it's like, you know what, we're now within like tenths of a second of this first place guy. It's like, oh, now we're beating this guy. It's like, and now you look at it, and this, not to brag, I don't say this to brag, but it's like now we're the guys to beat. We're the top guys, and it's so it consistency, just consistent seat time and just honing that craft, and and then you do things, you improve the car to make it handle better. Um, but it all comes down to the driver ultimately. But yeah, it's like now we're at the top of the list, and people are shooting for us.
It's awesome. And it's inspiring, you keep setting the bar higher and higher and progressing more and more. That's
Yep.
fun. Now, when it comes to strongman, when you started talking to me at work about that, I realized where you'd been, 7, 8 years ago. You got into it, um, as you told me, because you needed an outlet of some kind to get your mind onto something productive and interesting to you. And then when I saw your growth that happened super quickly because of your consistency and your relentlessness is showing up in that sport. I was inspired and I started asking you questions like, okay, so my doctor's always told me for years now, because of my back. They told me I got degenerative disc disease and
Mm.
all this stuff. And there were points where a doctor said, "Well, good luck ever walking again." You know, it got pretty bad at one point. And they said, "Don't ever squat, don't ever deadlift again." You know, and talking to you, I decided, I'm going to try it again after 25 years of not doing heavy lifting. And after a year and a half of doing that and listening to your advice and doing research about strongman and lifting heavier and gaining more muscle at our age, I'm 52, you're 53. I mean, it's entirely possible to reverse the effects of aging on the human body through the acquisition of dense, solid muscle through heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. Why don't you tell the audience, about your interest in strongman, where that came from, why you got into it, and then how much you weighed, how much you were lifting then as opposed to now.
Yeah. So I guess I got it written on my little board up here when I started tracking my PRs, and it goes back to age 46. My first PR, my deadlift was 270 pounds. Um, so I guess I was probably 45 maybe when I started like lifting weights, because yeah, I'm 6 foot tall, and I was about 160 pounds, and just skinny, very skinny, um, not not healthy. I just ate whatever. Um, had some kind of looming health issues, and it got to the point where I just did not like what I saw in the mirror. Just a skinny, out of shape person, and I just wanted to look better. So initially it was just about aesthetics. Like I'm going to lift some weights, and I'm going to start lifting weights, and I just to look better. And probably did that for maybe a year. No real, I wasn't following a program. I was still kind of like trying to learn everything, just like what's a good thing to do for this or that. And um, I followed, I found a guy, Athlete X on YouTube, had a lot of good, like informational videos on like just proper techniques, uh, maybe exercises to do, what you shouldn't do. So I learned a lot from him in the beginning. Had a lot of good information, and but yeah, I just started lifting just for aesthetics, and then it kind of got to the point where I was getting kind of bored with it. Like, how much weight can I add to this? Like, I want to get stronger. Like I don't want to just lift for lifting's sake, just to, you know, have big biceps or abs or whatever. It's like, wait, maybe I can start adding weight to this bar. Like, oh, let me look into this, like deadlifting. Oh, that looks pretty cool. You see these guys lift, hundreds, pounds, and it's like, man, maybe I could do that. Just and I started like trying to just take in all the information I could. Like, okay, what's a good program that I can follow to try and get stronger? Because just doing 5 sets of 10 or whatever, that's not the way it works. And I've discovered Jim Windler and his 531 program, and that which just focuses on, it's just a good program if you want to get strong. It's simple, not complicated. And I've been following 531 from Jim Windler since the beginning, into the strength, uh uh my strength endeavors.
For people
Um
who don't know what 531 is, just explain that real quick.
let's see if I can explain it easily. So it's sim simply what it is it's like 3 weeks. The first week you're going to do, you're going to work up to 5 reps of your top set. The second week is 3 reps of your top set. And then the third week is 1 rep of your top set. And each week it's all based on percentages of your 1 rep max. So the first thing you got to do is figure out, okay, what's your 1 rep max in, deadlift, squat, bench press, overhead press. Um, and there's calculators you can do that. You don't have to like kill yourself trying to do an actual 1 rep max. There's 1 rep max calculators that you can get on your phone. Um, but you have to know what your 1 rep max is first. And then based on the percentages, like your 5 rep week, I think is like, and you'll have to look this up. I don't have it to memory, but because I've been doing it for so long, I don't even think about it anymore. I have like an Excel spreadsheet that I nerd out on and it does it all for me. But I think it's 75% or 70 to 75% of your 1 rep max, you're going to do 5 reps. And then the second week is like 85% at 3 reps. And then that third week, you're doing 95% with 1 rep. Um, that's
How many times are you doing that 1 rep?
um,
Like 4 sets or?
well, once.
Okay, so just the one time and then you're done with
You
that
have
week.
your warm up sets, so you warm up with like, 50, 60, 70, and then your working sets, you're going up from like 70, 80, 90. Um, but yeah, you're just doing, I mean, you can do more if you feel like it, but at minimum, you do you're doing that 95% or 100% 1 rep one time.
That's intense.
And then I'm explaining this horribly. It's hard to like just verbalize it. You have to Google it and you'll learn it. But and then you're continually adding weight to the bar every 3 weeks, and you just kind of progress. It's like a going up like that. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Um, and if you do that consistently over time, over the years, you'll get stronger. There's no magic formula. There's no complicated thing to it. You just consistently add weight to the bar, lift heavy weights, you're going to get stronger.
Um,
And like I say, in 2017, my first PR was 270 pounds. Um, this past year, I pulled 585. So,
that's a big climb. Describe to the audience the importance of nutrition throughout all this and kind of explain what you do on a consistent basis.
yeah. So, also, when I was learning everything, I was trying to learn about, how can I pack on, some muscle, gain some weight. And I come across Stan Efferding and talking about his vertical diet. Excuse me. And the vertical diet is, see if I can explain this very well. It's another thing you need to just Google it and learn it. Because I'm going to explain it horribly, but it's based on it's kind of I don't really call it a diet per se. It's just kind of a way to approach your nutrition in a smart way. Because it's all based on whole foods. Um, your protein source is red meat. Um, carbs are, eat is white rice, and your so that's where you're getting your macros is from the red meat and the rice, and then all your micronutrients come from uh, low FODMAP vegetables like spinach, carrots, um, orange juice, eggs, cheese. that sort of thing. He has a sweet potato like so. I talk about FODMAP. It's just it's I don't know exactly what that acronym stands for. It's some scientific terms, but it's food that doesn't cause you like digestive distress. It doesn't make you bloated. Like, if you eat broccoli or cauliflower, you end up like bloated and gassy.
Yeah.
You don't want that. You want foods that don't give you gas like that and cause bloating. So, cooked baby spinach, carrots, foods that are low on that FODMAP list that don't cause you distress, and it's not an elimination diet. It's not completely carnivore. It's not completely vegan. It's a balanced meal. Eat your meat, eat your veggies, don't
Put
cut,
to work.
you know, it all comes together and it's all good for you. Um, He has sweet potatoes on there, but see, I can't eat sweet potatoes because they give me gas. So I don't eat sweet potatoes. But and, you just have to kind of figure out what works for you. But I don't think you can't go wrong with spinach and carrots. It's good. It's fiber. It's good for you.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I so discovered Stan talking about his vertical diet, and that guy's a wealth of information. And that's when I decided, all right, I'm gonna try and you know put some weight on. And I went. I wonder how from 160. I now weigh 200, and I think if I weighed myself this morning, I'm probably about 220, 225. I float between 220 and 225, just depend on the water weight. But I gained 60 pounds, and it's not easy. I'm telling you, I'm not a big eater. I'm not a person that just enjoys eating food. So it was work. It was because you got to eat like it's your job.
Yeah.
So so you have to do it slowly. You have to train your appetite like you train your body. And you can't just eat. I'm gonna because my goal is I try to get 4,000 to 4,500 calories a day. And to do that for like right from the start when I weighed 160 pounds, oh, there's no way. I mean, you just make yourself sick. But you just have to slowly add a meal or add extra calories because it's all about getting those calories in. And it was hard at first, very hard because you're just constantly full. You're just always full and like, oh, it sucks.
Yeah, there's a guy at work, Sean. He just really started getting into lifting and nutrition and everything, and he's at that point now where it's like, damn, man, I gotta eat more. Ugh, I'm trying to gain this muscle mass, but it is a lot of work.
Like it's the hardest thing. I mean, it's lifting weights is easy, man. Eating more,
Of the
that
nutritious, healthy, dense, natural whole
is
foods. Yeah,
that is the hardest. That is the hardest thing. And
each cake's different.
I'm sure, and I'm sure there's people that if you're overweight and you want to lose weight, you're thinking, well, you know, it's it's just as hard to lose weight as it is. It's just as hard to gain weight. From my perspective, yeah, it was hard. And I guess that's the point I'm trying to drive across is if you're skinny and you want to gain weight, you're gonna have to work for it. You're gonna have to work hard for it, but just keep at it and keep doing it. And eventually, like I say, you train your appetite, and now it's easy. Like I don't even think about it now. It's just I eat the same thing every day. Um, and it's just the norm now. But at first it was rough trying to just eat all that steak and rice and oh, let's eat some more steak and more rice.
Back in 2014, in between like 1999 to 2014, I was on a lot of medications for like severe depression, anxiety, all these things. And I had a ton of water weight, but I also would drink like seven big gulp, full size big gulps of Mountain Dew a
Mm,
day,
yeah.
and eat like crap all the time. And I was really unhealthy for a long time. I was 265, just completely out of shape. And of course, the doctor's telling me, well, you got this problem with your discs. Of course I did. Who wouldn't eating
Mhm.
like that? But when I started my life over again in 2014, I came across this documentary called Fed Up, all about sugars. So I was like, oh, by golly, I'm going to cut sugars out of my diet. And the first 2 weeks, I went through withdrawals that were horrendous. I didn't know that that's what it was at the time. I just thought I was dying. But after about week three, I started feeling a lot better. I was mentally clear. And within a year's time, I lost 65 pounds. I got down to 190 pounds shredded. I started working it out again. But the main thing that helped that all happen was getting off those meds and getting onto chicken, rice, broccoli every single day for dinner. I had like, I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I had oatmeal, blueberries, bananas every morning, no matter what. And the same exact thing every single day for a year and a half straight.
Yeah.
And the consistency in nutrition, I mean, you do A plus B, it's always going to equal C,
Mhm.
and the body's no
Yeah.
different. So the consistency was key, but I really uh, get what you say when you're saying it's hard to lose the weight and it's hard to gain the weight, depending on the weight. If it's all fat, it's pretty easy, but muscle is a different story entirely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you
You,
had goals in mind, and you still do. How many competitions have you been a part of now?
oh man. I keep a list. I think I want to say it's over 30. I've competed over 30 times in the past. Uh, well, my first competition was in 2019. Um,
Wow.
so I guess going back to discovering strongman. Um, so I had good programming from Jim Windler. I had my nutrition on point with Stan Efferding, and now it was like, all right, I'm starting to add some weight to the bar. I'm starting to get some put on some pounds, gonna put on some muscle, and so I'm progressing in that respect. And then I discovered on YouTube a guy. His name is Brian Alsrew from neversate.com, or Neversate Gym. Anyway, Brian Alsrew is his name, and he it's kind of like Athlete X had his tutorials on, like, lifting and uh that whole side of it. So Brian had a lot of tutorials and stuff on strongman, like lifting a log or lifting stones, sandbags. And this guy is incredibly strong. I mean, really strong. And just, deadlifting all this weight and overhead pressing and just showing how he does it and how to do it. And I learned a lot I learned stuff I learned from him. I still apply to today. Um,
Like breathing
and
techniques while you're lifting, things like that.
yes, the breathing technique was a big one. The breathing and bracing. Um, and But through him, I discovered strongman because I knew of strongman. You watch the shows on ESPN, once a year they have the big giants out there doing their thing.
Yeah.
And it was always like, oh, that's so cool. I remember just like when we go into Walmart, when I was a young man, and it's like they have the big electronics section with the TVs on and they'd be playing strongman. I just stand there and watch in the Walmart, watching it on TV. Um, but but yeah, you always think of strongman as that's for these giants.
Mhm.
I'm a little guy. That's not for me. Well, through Brian Alsrew, I discover, like, okay, strongman is a thing, and they have weight classes, and they even have age groups. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe I could do that. And I kind of got in, I wasn't into competing yet, but I liked the sport of it, like just the lifts, because it's weird. It's like they're picking up logs and they're picking up stones and sandbags, and it's not just a barbell. They're doing these like weird, odd lifts, and that really appealed to me. Just the weird, the uncommon things of it, and so I really got into it. Like, oh, like, this strongman's pretty cool. I'm going to start. I ended up buying my own log, and I started making my own stones, and then I started on Instagram, following strongman athletes, and there's a couple here in Arizona that I started following, and one guy, he was out of Tucson. He I started chatting with him, just asking him questions, because I was curious about strongman, and he would respond and answer questions for me. And he was coming up to Phoenix to compete at a strongman competition. So I thought, well, I'm gonna go check that out. I'm gonna go watch. And so I show up there. It was downtown. His Beer Bullies was the competition name, out of a Liberty Performance. And so I'm there to watch. And I see the guy and I say hi to him, and he asked me, he's like, "Why aren't you doing this?" And I was just like, "Well, I'm not strong enough." And he told me something that I'll never forget. He's like, "Dude, you'll never be strong enough." And it is so true. Like, I think just even now, it's like, yeah, I deadlift 585 pounds. I can lift a 300-pound stone. It's like, it's not enough. I'm still not strong enough, because there's always going to be someone better, you know. And
at your weight and your age group.
yeah, it's like, and it's so true. It's like you're never strong enough, and it's even just pursuing your own goals. It's like it's never enough. You constantly want to add weight to that bar.
Oh
You
yeah.
want to get that next PR. So it's like, man, that just really struck home. Was like, yeah, you're never going to be strong enough. And I was like, okay. And I decided, he's the one that actually told me about there was a competition in Albuquerque. um it was a just a little local competition. The weights were light, it wasn't a heavy competition. He's like, hey, this would be a really good first comp for you. um you know so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. So my first competition was out of state. Like, I actually had to go all the way to Albuquerque to compete. Um, but before then, this is in 2019. Uh, I had also followed a guy on Instagram, Marshall Zen, and his Boss Hog is his Instagram handle.
That dude's a
Uh,
beast, man.
and so I followed him, and I hadn't messaged him or anything, but I had seen him. I saw him at one competition. Uh, and then I think I think the next year, so that was back in like 2018. I think I had seen him and I followed him on Instagram, but I didn't meet him yet. And then the next year, this was what they call it? I think they called it the Europa. It was at the convention center. Um, I was there just to watch, and I saw Marshall walking by with his family. So I went up and introduced myself to him just to say hi to him. And I was like, hey, I follow you on Instagram, and he's like, oh, that's cool. It's like, hey, if you want, you can come train with us on the weekend. He was like, oh, well, where do you live? He's like, yeah, he lives in Santan Valley. I was like, well, I live in Santan Valley. And it turns out he's like 3 miles down the road from me. It's like, go figure. So yeah, he invited me to come out and train with him on a Saturday morning. So I went out there, and yeah, I've been doing it ever since. And with all those guys. And yeah, Marshall, he's definitely like a pillar, like the cornerstone of our little strongman group for sure. And learned a lot from him. And I'm really grateful that I have someone like that close by. And yeah, and it's like so they're like it's like a brotherhood, like a family out there.
When our son Alex and I had come to see you guys this last August in Scottsdale,
Mm.
I got to meet him and Steve in person, and we all four got a picture. And
Mm.
I remember Alex was about to snap the picture, and I'm like, I feel so small next to you guys, you know? And here I am, I weigh 250, but I know how strong you guys are. I see your training videos on a daily basis. I'm inspired by you guys. I watch you guys closely, see what you're doing. And I feel so weak and small next to you three that just came out of my mouth. And I remember Marshall looked up at me and he's like, "What the hell?" You know, and I was like, "What? I really do. I feel small next to you guys." It was
Yeah.
funny. You guys are freaking strong though, man. I'll tell you what, I haven't lifted as much as I'm lifting now in 25 years plus, and it keeps getting better every time, but it's still like half as much as what you guys are picking up and throwing around. It's just mind blowing,
Well, everyone starts somewhere.
man.
Um, yeah, and it goes back to that consistency. Just, I train, well, I guess 5 days a week. I train here. I have my home gym, um, through the weekdays. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday typically is my schedule. Wednesday and Saturday are my rest days. And then Sunday morning we go and train at Marshall's garage gym for, like event training. If we have because at any one point, any of us have a strongman competition coming up, whether they have something or I have something, or we're all doing it together. So, we train events at his place, just prepping for, the next competition, whatever's coming up.
And I know you've over the years gotten really good at making the huge stones. You've sold them to a lot of gyms all throughout Arizona, and you guys have some
Yeah,
at Marshalls that you train with. Just massive, man. That's another
yeah. So,
skill.
you know, so I got my first little mold because I wanted to make a stone. I do everything for myself. The butitis for me. The stones, I got the mold because I wanted to make my own stone. My first stone was like 165 pounds. I look back at videos, I can't even pick it up at the time. It was kind of funny. It's cool to see just the progress. But yeah, I make the stones for myself. And then I think I made one for Marshall and because he needed one. So I made one for him. And then just word kind of got out like, oh, Eric makes stones. I've never once advertised, I do not advertise this whatsoever because it's not it's not like a side business that I ever wanted to do because it is a physically demanding thing to make these concrete stones, these Atlas stones. And it's a lot of work and I don't ask a lot of money. I think my prices are pretty cheap, because I uh I do it mostly like for so to what you said, I've made so many Atlas stones for local gyms and people here in the valley that the probability that if you see someone training on a stone, it's probably one I made. Like it's I've made that many. I had never kept count, but it's at least several dozen stones are out there in the Phoenix area that I have made.
My wife and I showed up to an event, and you took us into that room where all those stones were being stored, and there's rows of stones. And it's like, yeah, I made all those, and I was like, holy crap, that is so
Yeah,
much work, man. I've seen
yeah,
videos of how long it takes, how you do it, how you perfected the method. And I was like, whoa, man, that's
yeah.
insane. What's the heaviest
Uh,
stone you've made?
what's that?
The heaviest stone?
The heaviest one I've made is a 495. That was for Jerry Pritchett. Um,
How many guys in Arizona can pick that thing up?
Dude, but maybe one or two people I could, one I know of. I think Roy Arantia could do it.
Wow.
Um,
And we're
but
talking shouldering these stones, picking them up off the
well,
ground and up.
I don't know about shouldering a 495, but just picking it up and loading it onto a platform.
Okay. Wow.
If you could shoulder a 495, I'd like to see that.
That's like the mountain, right?
That would be a feat of strength for sure. Yeah, when you're talking that much weight, like a 500-pound stone, you're talking like there's only maybe one or two people in Arizona or even nationwide that you're talking a handful of guys that could do that because that's a big stone.
And
Um,
and if age matters, right? And so you had recommended a book
yeah,
and
Michael and Ken McClellan wrote that, and yeah, it's a good book. There's a lot of good information in there. For really for anybody, it's tailored to you know masters, 40 plus and up level strongman, but there's information in there that's good for like just a beginner. It's a lot of good information in there. Anything you want to know about strongman, it's in that book.
it's called Mastering Strongman, a training guide for 40 plus strongman athletes. It's available
Yeah,
on Amazon.
yeah,
The flipping through it and reading some things, and one that stood out was always bring an extra pair of underwear with you because shit happens.
yes. I say from experience,
Yeah, we don't even need to go there, but
more
I
than
thought that was funny.
more than once. Yeah, you're gonna
They cover everything.
it could happen.
Good book. Yeah, yeah, we've seen videos of that all over the place. I was like, oh, oh. Yeah, when you're lifting heavy stuff, you never know what's going to come out.
Yeah, I I always say I'm old and my orifices are loose.
Yeah, shoot. The way that I feel now, I feel younger than I did in my 30s, literally.
Yeah,
The amount of inflammation and pain that I was experiencing in my 30s and even early 40s was so immense. I just couldn't think straight. The mental clarity wasn't there. And now with this new lifestyle, eating right, eating well, and reducing the amount of inflammation, the brain swelling, the mental fog has gone, the clarity come back, and I'm getting stronger every time I go to the gym. And I have you to thank for it, man. So I really appreciate it. Thank
right
you.
on. Appreciate it. Yeah, I definitely feel better too when I start eating right, on that vertical diet and getting the right vitamins and just, the whole thing. Yeah, you feel a lot better. Um,
One other thing I did want to cover before we close was the story about your son, Hans. That was a little, well, really scary and a truly inspiring comeback and recovery. If you don't mind
yeah,
sharing that.
yeah. So it was November of 2023. It's been over a year.
Yeah.
We're in 25. So yeah, it was November of 2023. Um, so my son, uh, and going back to the church stuff. So, my children were born and raised in that environment in the church, which I appreciate because they grew up to be really good people. And um, so I really appreciate that. They grew up in that environment and became they're just really good people. And but that's the life that they know, and that's the life they love. And both my daughter and my son are very active in all that. And so yeah, Hans, he's and he has goals. He wants to be like go overseas and evangelize, and like missionary stuff. That's what he wants to do. Um, and he would go out. So he lives in uh, Peoria, Glendale area, and that's where their church is. So he was out. I guess what he does is they have a Wednesday night service. So before the service, he would go out on the corner with a little uh, microphone and an amplifier and just go on the corner and street preach. Nothing, just like come to Jesus kind of stuff. Nothing hateful or anything like that. It's not like those crazy street preachers that just with their signs that hate whatever. It's all this love of God, come to Jesus kind of stuff. And well, I guess that evening in November, a couple years ago, uh, he got it was like they don't know where it came from, but he got shot in the head, and that the bullet had entered his um, left temple and traveled through his brain, and it's still inside of his head. Um, at the time, he was out there by himself. Uh, his wife and children were in the car in the parking lot, just kind of waiting. Um, and they didn't really know what happened because he got hit and he stumbled. He went down to his knees. There's the camera from from the intersection captured all this. Um, and he got back up and gathered up his stuff and went to the car. Um, and of course, he was bleeding really bad, but they didn't realize what they thought. Maybe he got someone threw a rock or a bottle or something. Um, they eventually he started getting kind of worse, convulsing, and he wasn't speaking. So they took him to the hospital, and that's when they discovered that he had a bullet in his brain. And I had gotten the call. My daughter at the time lived in Hawaii. I got the call from her first. She was like, "Did you realize? Did you know that Hans got shot?" And I was just like, "What?" So I called Zulia, my daughter-in-law, and she was obviously very distraught and telling me, Hans had been shot. He's at the hospital. And I was like, "Where are you guys at?" "I'm on my way." So they were at Thunderbird Hospital over in Glendale, and so I went there. And yeah, that first night was just so. It was you didn't know if he was going to make it. It was very dire. Just I mean, you can imagine just the emotion and just the dark cloud because he was in a medically induced coma, um, all tubed up on life support. The doctors, they weren't going to operate on him because they couldn't. Uh, anything they anything they did would have caused more damage. Um, there was just a lot of question on whether he was going to make it through the night. The doctors didn't know. The detective was there, and he was like, "Well, after the autopsy, we'll know what bullet it is." And you're just hearing all this, and you're like, "Oh my God!" It's like, what's going to happen? And I think mentally, I was prepared for him to not make it. I was in that mind. I was rooted mentally prepared for the worst, um, because that's a devastating injury. And but he made it through the night and the next day, and then you start thinking, well, maybe, you know all right, he's going to live. But then you're wondering, like, well, how's he going to come out on the other side of this? Is he going to be the same? Is he going to be uh you know mentally functional? You don't know. And just over the months, that was think he finally woke up like around, I forget, man, it was a couple months, January, February. He was, awake and then, started be started to become coherent and he just became slowly got better and better. Um, and yeah, I mean, here it is, over a year later, and he's functioning as close to normal as I guess you can ask. I don't know of any issues that he really has. I know he's working. He went back to work full time. I think he's driving. It's they're living their life just like normal,
I
just like
call that
before.
a modern day miracle. I can't even imagine what difficulties and challenges mentally, emotionally, spiritually that everybody went through, everyone in the family, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody came together and they were a solid unit.
yeah. It was yeah. My daughter moved back here to Phoenix, so they could be close, and so it's nice having all of them here at the same place, and
Yeah, I get to see all the grandbabies and everybody.
yeah, not have to fly across an ocean to see them. So that's cool. But yeah, he had gone through therapy. You know, he did what he needed to do to get better. And but yeah, it's definitely a miracle. Um, there's interviews and stuff that you can find of him talking about it. But yeah, it was that was quite an ordeal at the beginning for sure, because it's hard, when you go and as a father, like you're just helpless. There's absolutely nothing you can do to fix it. You know, you're just helpless there looking at your son, on life support, all tubed up, you know, just intubated, the whole thing. And you're just like, yeah, it was rough.
So many people all over the community and the state that were just sending prayers and good energy. And I remember the moment that I had found out, I had texted you and said, "Hey man, I don't know how you're doing. You know, I can only imagine how I would be doing. So if you want me to come over and sit with you and just chill, I will, but please don't make me lift weights with you." That's that's
Yeah.
all.
And at that first night, when the first night, when I'm at the hospital, and I'd send a text out to my friends, my racing buddies and to my training partners, to everybody, what happened. And um, Ealing trying to get emotional, but you know, Ealing came to be with me, and I really appreciate that. I never told him, but stuff like that's that meant a lot just for him to be there. He just dropped what he did and came to the hospital and sat in the waiting room with me, and that was yeah, that means a lot. But sorry,
Oh man, don't be. That's
but
normal. I just can't even believe how emotionally solid and stoic you were during that time. I had
yeah,
no clue how you might be feeling because you were just a freaking Terminator, man. You were a rock. And I was like, oh my God, this dude really is a strong man. Uh,
yeah, I think that's just part of being a guy. Just
yeah,
you don't
man.
show emotion.
Yeah,
And, I never really. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. Like seeing Hans laying there in bed.
yeah. As a father, I get that, man. That's the last thing you want is to ever see any of your kids suffering in any way.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not here. But yeah, I think that's just being a part of being a guy. It's like you keep all that emotion down. You don't let it come out. And
Yeah. Just now in this new generational way of seeing things, people are being told as a guy, it's okay to show emotion. It's okay. That's actual strength, you know, in my opinion. But we weren't raised like that. It was like, yeah, rub some dirt on it, quit being a wuss, get back on the bike and go. What the
Yep.
hell's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah. Lift weights, keep all that anger and emotion, keep it down.
Bottled up. I told my dad one time, I was like, I'm really trying to transcend my rage and my anger. And he thought for a moment. He goes, "Why the hell would you do that?" And I tried to explain it to him. I'm like, I really don't want to feel that and have that as a part of me anymore. I'm trying to root it out. And he goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, man. Listen, in order to be a truly good man, you got to be dangerous and you need to compartmentalize that rage and that anger somewhere within you to use it when it's necessary. And
Yeah.
you're a good man and you know when that time will be and let it all out. Unleash that rage at that time. But until then, just tuck it away and save it for a good time to be using it." And I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way. That's cool.
Yeah.
Uh, I know that you've had experiences in your life like most men have, like we've bottled up the rage and the anger within all of our emotions, and they get stuck and they manifest in different ways in our lives. But I think that you're a great example of a good man and how to sort of channel that excess energy of any kind into really productive interests and hobbies and different ways of experimenting with this human life. I mean, I hear about your life and the things you've done, and it's truly inspiring to me. That's why I follow you on Instagram and I watch your content daily because the consistency inspires me. And I get up and I turn my Instagram off and I go work out, just like that. That's all I needed. Thanks,
Yeah.
man. So I want to acknowledge you for the good man that you are. And I appreciate your friendship. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. I like
Yeah,
uh I like I like the chats that we have, at work. Because not I think that it's just the nature of my job that people don't talk to me that much that don't know if they don't know me. I mean, there's guys that know me. We talk, but I think for the most part, people are a little scared sometimes. I don't because they don't know they either don't know me, just my position and what I do there maybe intimidates them. But yeah, it's like when people are friendly to me and they talk to me, it's like I have a new friend.
I know I feel the same way.
I'm gonna come talk to you all the time now.
Yeah,
But yeah, I appreciate like all the little chats we have. It's you know you're
yeah,
a
me
good
too.
appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to give out as advice to young men in today's world, or anything that you'd like to
Hmm.
say before we close?
I don't know. Advice? Not sure. I think we kind of cover it all in our talk, but I would just say, there's no disadvantage to being strong. Um, and I know, when you're young, you want to look good. It's like I want to have abs, and I want to, aesthetics. I would say focus on strength, and aesthetics will follow. You know, um, JF Carone, he's a Canadian strongman. He says, um, abs are not a sign of power. Abs are just a sign you're not eating enough. But so yeah, I guess if these young men are looking to train and do whatever, it's like just yeah, there's no disadvantage to being strong. You know,
I like
don't
that.
don't be weak. Don't be a weak person. Being strong will earn you. Uh, it'll build your confidence. You'll earn respect from others just by your presence, by the way you carry yourself, by the way you look. Um, if that's advice, I don't know. I guess that's what just comes to my head. There's no disadvantage to being strong.
I fully agree, and that can transfer over and be applied to any area or aspect in our lives, you know, emotional strength, physical strength, spiritual strength, financial strength, health and wellness is what it's all about. That's the true sign of abundance is, you know, having the relentlessness, the commitment, the consistency to become progressively stronger the entire rest of our lives. That's where it's at, man. So excellent. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you too.
Uh, for all the guests, I highly recommend checking out the notes below. I'm going to have links to all of Eric's stuff so you can find him and follow him. I highly recommend it. Also, make sure to remember to go to goodinthehead.com. Go to the menu section, check out things like my daily perspective shift. There's all kinds of habit hacking challenges, belief upgrade challenges. And thank you so much for your support. And until next time, um, stay good in the head.